we have the mindset of the person that's buying the whole business at the price you would realize by multiplying the price we're paying by share by the number of outstanding shares. And we want the price for the whole business so calculated to look very attractive. So we like buying individual shares at a price that's lower than we think a rational person would pay if he could buy the whole business. Yeah, at a deeper level of generality, if you have a passionate interest in knowing why things are happening, you always are trying to figure out the world in terms of why is this happening or why is this not happening. That cast of mind kept over long periods gradually improves your ability to cope with reality. And if you don't have that cast of mind, I think you're destined probably for failure, even if you've got a pretty high IQ.
We have another question. Peter Ferlin from Toronto. Mr. Munger, you famously run investments through your mental checklist. Is there anything that you wish you had added to your checklist sooner?
Well, I'm constantly making mistakes where I can, in retrospect, realize that I should have decided differently. And I think that that is inevitable because it's difficult to be a good investor. And I'm pretty easy on myself these days. I'm satisfied with the way things have worked out, and I'm not gnashing my teeth that other people are doing better. And I think that the methods that I've used, including the checklists, are the correct methods. And I'm grateful that I found them as early as I did and that the methods have worked as well as they have. And I recommend that other people follow my example. It reminds me of the key phrase in Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. He says, "My sword I leave to him who can wear it." I'm afraid that's Charlie, the way we all have to leave our swords. We have to deal in things that we're capable of understanding. And then once we're over that filter, we have to have a business with some intrinsic characteristics that give it a durable competitive advantage. And then, of course, we would vastly prefer a management in place with a lot of integrity and talent. And finally, no matter how wonderful it is, it's not worth an infinite price. So we have to have a price that makes sense and gives a margin of safety considering the natural vicissitudes of life. That's a very simple set of ideas. And the reason that our ideas have not spread faster is they're too simple. The professional classes can't justify their existence if that's all they have to say. I mean, it's all so obvious and so simple. What would they have to do with the rest of the semester? Well, of course, if a person is a chronic drunk, we avoid him. Everybody has shortcuts to screen out certain hazards. And we probably have more of those shortcuts than others. And they've served us well over the years. One of the great advantages of the way Berkshire operates is that we associate with a lot of marvelous people. And if you stop to think about it, that is also true at the Daily Journal. What little newspaper company has come through the crisis that's destroying all the newspapers better than the little Daily Journal? And we've had marvelous people here who've helped us do it through very difficult times, and one of them is Jerry Salzman. And Jerry and I have been together how many years, Jerry?
Well, I think I had the right temperament. And when people gave me a good idea, and I could see it was a good idea, I quickly mastered it and started using it and just used it for the rest of my life. And you'd say that everybody does that in their education, but I don't think everybody does. It's such a simple idea. And of course, without the method of learning, you're like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. It's just not going to work very well. Take Jerry. You think the Daily Journal would have hundreds of millions of marketable securities now if Jerry didn't know how to learn something new? He didn't know one damn thing about the Daily Journal when we made him head of it. But he knew how to learn what he didn't know. Of course, that's a useful thing. And we put Jerry in, and he's made every decision wonderfully ever since. That's our system. Tom Murphy used to say his system of management was delegation just short of total abdication. And that's the way we handled Jerry. Well, of course, if they bring in a brand new technology you don't understand at all, you're at something of a disadvantage. And my advice would be if you have a fixable disadvantage, remove it. And if it's unfixable, learn to live without it. What else can you do? You fix what can be fixed, and what can't be fixed, you endure.
Another idea that was hugely useful to me was that I listened in law school when some wag said, a legal mind is a mind that when two things are all twisted up together and interacting, it's feasible to think responsibly about one thing and not the other. Well, I could see from that one sentence that that was perfectly ridiculous. And it pushed me further into my natural drift, which was into learning all the big ideas and all the big disciplines. So I wouldn't be a perfect damn fool who was trying to think about one aspect of something that couldn't be removed from the totality of the situation in a constructive fashion. And what I noted, since the really big ideas carry 95% of the freight, that it wasn't at all hard for me to pick up all the big ideas in all the disciplines and make them a standard part of my mental routines. Once you have the ideas, of course, they're no good if you don't practice. If you don't practice, you lose it. So I went through life constantly practicing this multidisciplinary approach. Well, I can't tell you what that's done for me. It's made life more fun. It's made me more constructive. It's made me more helpful to others. It's made me enormously rich. You name it, that attitude really helps. Now, there are dangers in it because it works so well that if you do it, you will frequently find you're sitting in the presence of some other expert, maybe even an expert that's superior to you, supervising you. And you will know more than he does about his own specialty, a lot more. You'll see the correct answer when he's missed it. That is a very dangerous position to be in. You can cause enormous offense by helpfully being right in a way that causes somebody else to lose face. And I never found a perfect way to solve that problem. I was a great poker player when I was young, but I wasn't a good enough poker player, so the people failed to sense that I thought I knew more than they did about their subjects, and it gave a lot of offense. Now I'm just regarded as eccentric, but there was a difficult period to go through.
In business, and obviously opportunity costs, which is a doctrine of economics, really a doctrine of lifesmanship, are also very important. And we've always had that kind of basic thinking. Of course, capital isn't free. And of course, you can figure cost of capital when you're borrowing money. or at least you can figure cost of loans. But the theorists had to develop some theory for what equity cost. And there they just went bonkers. They said if you earned 100% on capital because you had some marvelous business, your cost of capital was 100%. And therefore you shouldn't look at any opportunity that delivered a lousy 80%. That is the kind of thinking which came out of the capital assets pricing models and so forth that I've always considered inanity. What is Berkshire's cost of capital? We have this damn capital. It just keeps multiplying and multiplying. What is its cost? You have perfectly good old-fashioned doctrines like opportunity cost. You know, at any given time when we consider an investment, we have to compare it to the best alternative investment we have at that time. We had perfectly good old-fashioned ideas that are very basic to use, but they weren't good enough for these modern theorists. So they invented all this ridiculous mathematics, which concluded that the companies that made the most money had the highest costs of capital. Well, all I can say is it's not for us. Now, the other half of that question, you have perfectly good old-fashioned doctrines like opportunity cost. You know, at any given time when we consider an investment, we have to compare it to the best alternative investment we have at that time. We had perfectly good old-fashioned ideas that are very basic to use, but they weren't good enough for these modern theorists. So they invented all this ridiculous mathematics, which concluded that the companies that made the most money had the highest costs of capital. Well, all I can say is it's not for us.